A very long time ago, the Earth was home to many different kinds of humans, not just one. We, Homo sapiens, were just one branch of a large and diverse human family. Imagine a world where you might meet a Neanderthal on a walk through a European forest, or a tiny Homo floresiensis on an island in Indonesia. For most of our history, we shared this planet with our human cousins. We were not special. We were just another animal, minding our own business in a small corner of Africa. We did not have a bigger impact on the world than gorillas or fireflies. The story of humanity is not just our story, it is also the story of what happened to all our forgotten siblings. These other humans were not primitive versions of us. They were different, with their own strengths and adaptations. The Neanderthals were strong and well-suited to the cold climates of Ice Age Europe and Asia. They were skilled hunters, and likely had their own cultures, rituals, and complex social lives. Other species, like Homo erectus, survived for an astonishing 2 million years, far longer than we have existed so far. They spread across Asia and were incredibly resilient. We were not the inevitable winners of this family competition. For a very long time, we were an insignificant species, and there was no guarantee that we would one day walk on the moon or split the atom. So what happened to them? Where did all our brothers and sisters go? The evidence suggests a grim story. Around 70,000 years ago, as Homo sapiens began to spread out of Africa, the other human species started to disappear. Wherever we went, they vanished. It is unlikely this was a coincidence. Perhaps we were better hunters and outcompeted them for food. Perhaps we brought new diseases that their immune systems could not handle. Or perhaps it was something more direct and violent. The history of our own species is filled with conflict and intolerance. It is not hard to imagine that our ancestors treated their human relatives with the same hostility. The final outcome is clear. About 40,000 years ago, we were the last human species left on Earth. We became the sole heirs to the planet. This was perhaps the first major act of genocide in history, committed by our direct ancestors. It is a sobering thought that our success was built on the extinction of our closest family. This victory gave us control over the entire world, but it also left us alone. We forgot we ever had siblings, and we began to see ourselves as the pinnacle of creation, completely separate from the rest of the animal kingdom. This sense of lonely superiority has defined our worldview ever since, shaping our relationship with every other living thing. What made us, Homo sapiens, so special and so deadly? The answer is not in our bodies or our tools. Neanderthals were stronger than us, and their brains were just as large. The real change happened inside our minds. This was the cognitive revolution. It was a change in the way our brains were wired. This change allowed us to think in new ways. Most importantly, it gave us the power of imagination. We started to create and believe in stories, in things that do not physically exist. This might sound like a small thing, but it was the key to unlocking our potential and conquering the world. It was the secret ingredient that our siblings lacked. Before this revolution, human communication was simple. It was used to describe reality. Look, a lion, or careful, a river. But after the cognitive revolution, language became much more powerful. We could talk about things that were not right in front of us. We could discuss the past and plan for the future. More importantly, we could talk about things that were not real at all. We could speak of tribal spirits, of gods, of nations, of laws, and of justice. These shared fictions or myths allowed us to cooperate in ways no other animal could. You could never convince a chimpanzee to give you a banana by promising him endless bananas in chimpanzee heaven. This ability to believe in shared stories was our superpower. It allowed us to cooperate flexibly and in very large numbers. Hundreds or thousands of strangers could work together toward a common goal, like building a temple or fighting a war, because they all believed in the same god or the same king. This is something no other animal can do. A wolf pack can cooperate, but only with a small number of other wolves they know intimately. An ant colony can have millions of individuals, but their cooperation is rigid and programmed into their DNA. Only sapiens could create flexible systems for mass cooperation based on imagined realities. These shared fictions became the foundation of all human societies. Money is a story. We all agree that a piece of paper has value, so it does. Human rights are a story. There is no law in biology that says all humans are equal. It is a story we invented and choose to believe in. Corporations are stories. A company like Google or Ford is a legal fiction that exists only in our collective imagination. These stories are not lies. They are powerful tools that create our social reality. The cognitive revolution turned us from just another animal into the masters of fiction, and by doing so, we began to rewrite the rules of life on Earth. For most of our history, we were hunter-gatherers. We moved with the seasons, hunting animals and gathering plants. Our lives were varied and interesting. We worked fewer hours than people do today, and our diet was rich and diverse. We were skilled and knowledgeable about our environment. Then, about 12,000 years ago, some of us started to do something completely different. We began to farm. We settled down in one place and started to cultivate plants like wheat, rice, and potatoes. This shift is called the Agricultural Revolution. We often think of it as a great leap forward for humanity, the moment we started building civilization. But was it really a good deal for the average person? The evidence suggests that for most individuals, life got much harder. Farming was difficult, back-breaking work. It required long hours of toil under the hot sun, digging, planting, and watering. The diet of a farmer was much worse than that of a hunter-gatherer. It was based on a few staple crops, like wheat or rice, which lacked many essential nutrients. This led to new health problems, from bad teeth to vitamin deficiencies. Farmers were also much more vulnerable. A single drought or flood could wipe out their entire food supply, leading to starvation and famine. So why did we do it? Why did we trade a relatively good life for a harder one? The revolution was a trap. It happened slowly, generation by generation. It started with just a little bit of planting to supplement hunting and gathering, but this allowed the population to grow. More mouths to feed meant more crops were needed. Soon people were spending all their time farming just to survive. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late to go back. There were too many people, and the old knowledge of hunting and gathering was being lost. We did not domesticate wheat. In a way, wheat domesticated us. The agricultural revolution was a success for our species as a whole, but a disaster for many of the individuals who lived through it. The global population of Homo sapiens exploded. More people could be fed, even if their quality of life was lower. This population boom led to the creation of villages, then towns, and finally cities and empires. It created the need for new social structures to manage all these people living together. It led to the rise of elites, kings, priests, and soldiers, who lived off the surplus food produced by the hard-working peasants. The revolution created the world of haves and have-nots, and it set the stage for the complex societies we know today. After the agricultural revolution, human societies grew larger and more complex. We built cities, kingdoms, and great civilizations. But for a long time, these were like separate worlds. A person in China had no idea that the Roman Empire existed, and a Roman had never heard of the Maya civilization in America. Each culture had its own gods, its own laws, and its own way of life. They were isolated islands of humanity. But over the last few thousand years, a powerful trend has been at work: the unification of humankind. These separate worlds have slowly merged together, creating the single global civilization we live in today. Three great forces drove this process of unification. The first was money. Before money, trade was difficult. You had to barter. I'll give you 3 chickens for that axe. This only works if both people want what the other has. Money solved this problem. Coins made of gold or silver were valuable to everyone, everywhere. A Roman soldier could be paid with a coin that a merchant in India would happily accept. Money is the greatest story ever told. It is a system of universal trust. It has no religious or political affiliation. It connects people who do not know each other, do not like each other, and do not worship the same gods. The second great unifier was empire. An empire is a political system that rules over many different peoples and cultures. From the Roman Empire to the Mongol Empire and later the British Empire, conquest has been a powerful way to merge human societies. Empires spread common languages, laws, and customs over vast territories. They built roads and communication networks that brought distant peoples into contact. While empires were often built on violence and oppression, they also broke down barriers between cultures. They forced millions of people to see themselves not just as members of a local tribe, but as subjects of a larger political entity. The third force was universal religion. Before, religions were local. Each tribe had its own gods who cared only for them. But then, new kinds of religions appeared, like Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. These religions claimed to have a message for all of humanity. They believed in a universal truth and a supreme power that was relevant to every single person on Earth, from China to Mexico. Missionaries traveled far and wide, spreading their faith. Like empires, these religions helped to create a shared identity among millions of strangers, uniting them under the banner of a common belief system and a shared moral code. For most of history, people believed that all the important knowledge was already known. It was written down in ancient books or passed down by the gods. The goal of a smart person was to study these old texts and traditions. To admit you did not know something was a sign of weakness or failure. But about 500 years ago, a new and, radical idea started to take hold in Europe. People began to admit their ignorance. They began to say, "I don't know." This simple admission was the starting point of the scientific revolution. It was, honestly, a revolution of ignorance, and it changed the world forever by making us hungry for new discoveries. This new attitude led to a powerful partnership between science, technology, and power. Once people admitted they didn't know everything, they started to observe the world carefully and conduct experiments to find new knowledge. This new knowledge was not just for fun, it could be used to create new technologies. These technologies, in turn, gave people more power. For example, understanding the laws of physics allowed people to build better ships and more powerful cannons. This gave European nations a huge military advantage, allowing them to explore and conquer other parts of the world. Science gave them the tools to build vast global empires. The scientific revolution was fueled by a new way of thinking. It valued evidence and observation over ancient tradition. Scientists developed the scientific method. You make an observation, form a hypothesis, and then test it with experiments. This method proved to be incredibly effective at uncovering the secrets of the universe. We discovered the laws of gravity, the existence of microscopic germs, and the structure of DNA. We learned that the Earth was not the center of the universe, and that humans evolved from earlier life forms. This flood of new knowledge completely transformed our understanding of ourselves and our place in the cosmos. This revolution is still happening today, and honestly, it is moving faster than ever. The marriage of science and capitalism has created a cycle of endless growth and innovation. New scientific discoveries lead to new technologies, which create new industries and profits, which in turn fund more scientific research. This process has given us incredible powers. We can communicate instantly across the globe, cure diseases that once killed millions, and produce more food than ever before. But this new power has also come with great responsibility and new dangers, forcing us to confront questions that our ancestors could never have imagined. Our journey from an insignificant African ape to, the master of the world has had a devastating effect on the planet. Our success, honestly, has been a catastrophe for countless other species. And this didn't just begin with the Industrial Revolution and its smoking factories. It started much, much earlier. Even with Stone Age tools, our hunter-gatherer ancestors were, in a sense, ecological serial killers. When they spread out of Africa into new lands like Australia and the Americas, they arrived in a world filled with giant animals, mammoths, giant sloths, and saber-toothed cats. But within just a few thousand years of our arrival, most of these large animals were gone forever. We drove them to extinction. Our ancestors were not living in perfect harmony with nature. They were, in fact, incredibly effective hunters who disrupted ecosystems that had been stable for millions of years. They used fire to change landscapes and hunted animals that had never faced a predator as cunning and cooperative as Homo sapiens. The agricultural revolution only made things worse. We cleared vast forests to make way for our fields and crops. We diverted rivers to water them. We domesticated a few chosen species like cows, pigs, and chickens, while pushing countless wild animals to the brink of extinction by destroying their habitats. The scientific and industrial revolutions put this process into overdrive. We learned to harness the power of fossil fuels like coal and oil, giving us an almost unlimited source of cheap energy. This allowed us to build factories, cars, and power plants on a massive scale. We started to change the very chemistry of the atmosphere and the oceans. Our population exploded, growing from 1 billion in 1800 to over 8 billion today. To feed and house all these people, we have transformed more than half of the planet's land surface, destroying forests, wetlands, and grasslands at an alarming rate. Today, we face an unprecedented ecological crisis. Climate change, caused by the greenhouse gases we pump into the air, threatens to disrupt our weather patterns, raise sea levels, and cause mass extinctions. We are polluting our oceans with plastic and our soils with chemicals. We are now living through the 6th mass extinction event in Earth's history, but this one is different. It's not being caused by an asteroid or a volcano, it's being caused by us. We have become a force of nature, with the power to alter the planet on a geological scale. The fate of millions of species, and perhaps our own civilization, now depends on the choices we make. We are more powerful and prosperous than any humans in history. We have more food, more medicine, and more knowledge than our ancestors could have dreamed of. We have conquered famine, plague, and war to a degree that was once unimaginable. A person living in a developed country today has a better chance of dying from eating too much than from starvation. They are more likely to die of old age than from an infectious disease. On paper, we should be happier than ever before. But are we? Is the average modern person more content with their life than a medieval peasant or an ancient hunter-gatherer? The answer is, well, surprisingly unclear. While we have made enormous progress in reducing suffering from things like hunger and disease, it's not certain that we have increased our overall level of happiness. Psychologists have found that our happiness depends more on our expectations than on our objective conditions. When our lives improve, our expectations rise just as quickly. We get a better job or a bigger house, and for a short time we are happy, but soon we get used to it and want more. This is sometimes called the hedonic treadmill. We keep running faster and faster, but we stay in the same place emotionally. Furthermore, modern life has brought new kinds of stress and dissatisfaction. Hunter-gatherers lived in tight-knit communities, surrounded by friends and family their whole lives. Today, many people live in anonymous cities, disconnected from their communities and even their own families. We have more online friends than ever, but we may also be lonelier than ever. The constant pressure to succeed in a competitive capitalist world creates anxiety and depression. We compare our lives to the perfect, filtered images we see on social media, leaving many feeling inadequate and unhappy with their own reality. Ultimately, happiness might be a chemical process in our brains, determined by a complex system of nerves, neurons, and substances like serotonin and dopamine. Our biochemistry may have a natural set point for happiness, which is hard to change regardless of our external circumstances. Some people are just born with a sunnier disposition than others. If this is true, then all of our political, social, and economic revolutions may have had very little effect on our actual well-being. We have changed the world around us completely, but we may not have changed the fundamental experience of being a human. The great question for the future is whether we can use our growing knowledge to genuinely improve human happiness. For billions of years, life on Earth has been governed by the laws of natural selection. All living things, from bacteria to elephants, evolved according to these rules. But now, for the first time in history, one species is about to break free from them. Homo sapiens is on the verge of replacing natural selection with intelligent design, not the design of a god in the sky, but our own design. We are beginning to acquire the power to re-engineer our own bodies and minds. We are starting a new project, the upgrade of sapiens into something more than human. We are aiming to become gods. This project has three main goals. The first is biological engineering. We are already learning to manipulate our genes. In the future, we may be able to eliminate genetic diseases, slow down the aging process, and even enhance our physical and cognitive abilities. We could design babies with superior intelligence, memory, or physical strength. This raises profound ethical questions. Will these technologies be available to everyone, or will they create a new biological divide between the super-rich, who can afford to upgrade themselves, and the poor who cannot? We could see the emergence of a new biological caste system. The second part of the project involves creating cyborgs, beings that are part organic and part machine. This is already happening in a small way. We have bionic limbs and cochlear implants that connect directly to the human nervous system. In the future, we might be able to connect our brains directly to computers. Imagine being able to access all the world's information with a single thought, or to communicate with others telepathically. This could grant us superhuman powers, but it could also mean giving up our privacy and individuality in ways we cannot yet fathom. Our very consciousness could be merged with a global network. The third and most ambitious goal is the creation of completely inorganic life, artificial intelligence. This is not about creating clever programs that can play chess or drive a car. It's about creating a conscious, intelligent being that is not biological at all. If we succeed, it will be the most important event in the history of life since life first appeared. Such an AI could be vastly more intelligent than any human. Its rise could be the moment that Homo sapiens is no longer the smartest thing on the planet. The fate of humanity would then depend entirely on the goals and desires of this new superintelligence that we have created. We stand today at a historical crossroads. For thousands of generations, the fundamental questions of human existence have remained the same. People have always worried about what to eat, where to live, and how to find a partner. But now, we are facing entirely new questions. The technologies we are developing will change what it means to be human. We are about to gain the power to redesign life itself, and we are doing so without a clear plan or understanding of the consequences. The choices we make in the 21st century will shape the future of life for billions of years to come. This is both a thrilling and a terrifying prospect. The future is unknown, but we can imagine a few possibilities. Perhaps we will use our new powers wisely. We could create a world free from disease, poverty, and war. We could use genetic engineering and AI to solve climate change and restore the planet's ecosystems. We could elevate human consciousness and happiness to levels we can currently only dream of, creating a true paradise on Earth. This is the utopian vision that drives many scientists and entrepreneurs forward. It is the hope that technology will finally allow us to overcome our biological limitations and become the benevolent gods of our own creation. However, there is a much darker possibility. Our new powers could be used to create the worst dystopias imaginable. Authoritarian governments could use AI and biotechnology for total surveillance and control, creating societies where dissent is impossible. The gap between the rich and the poor could widen into a biological chasm between upgraded superhumans and a useless class of ordinary sapiens. We could accidentally unleash an artificial intelligence that we cannot control, which could decide that humanity is obsolete or a threat. Our quest for godhood could lead directly to our own extinction. The most important question in the world today might be, what do we want to want? As we gain godlike powers of creation and destruction, what will we choose to do with them? Our old myths and religions do not have answers for these new dilemmas. Our political systems are too slow to keep up with the pace of technological change. We are like children playing with explosives. We are more powerful than ever before, but we have very little idea of what we are doing. The story of Homo sapiens began 70,000 years ago. It may be that the final chapter of that story is now being written.